The situation in Afghanistan is putting the so-called special relationship between the UK and the US under great scrutiny. This is why. Back in January, when Joe Biden became president, Boris Johnson was the first leader he called. And on America's alliances, we also heard this from Secretary of State Antony Blinken.
We get so much more done with them than we could without them. So we're making a big push right now to reconnect with our friends and allies.
The desire to move beyond Trump was palpable. That was March. In April, President Biden announced he'd implement Trump's plans to withdraw from Afghanistan.
I've concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home.
The president also said he'd consulted with his allies, but the withdrawal wasn't what the UK wanted.
It's not a decision that we'd hoped for, but we obviously respect it, and it's clearly an acknowledgement of an evolving US strategic posture.
The UK was soon to have the chance to explore this evolution close up. The G7 gathered in Cornwall with Joe Biden the central figure and Boris Johnson the host.
You call it the deep and meaningful relationship, whatever you want, the indestructible relationship.
President Biden was equally effusive.
We affirmed the special relationship, as is not said lightly, the special relationship between our people.
That was June. Also in June, the US withdrawal from Afghanistan was now at full tilt. By early July, its central facility, Bagram Air Base, had been abandoned. By mid-August, the Taliban were on the outskirts of Kabul. By Sunday, the 15th of August, the Taliban were in the presidential palace. The government had fallen. And this was the worst-case scenario for the US and the UK. A 20-year shared endeavour to build a democracy was gone, replaced by a desperate rush to get people out. That was on the Sunday. Joe Biden didn't call Boris Johnson. On Monday, the urgency of the situation intensified. Joe Biden still didn't call Boris Johnson. They eventually spoke on Tuesday, over 48 hours after the fall of Kabul. The next day, Boris Johnson explained the UK's position.
The West could not continue this US-led mission, a mission conceived and executed in support and defence of America, without American logistics, without US air power.
A mission executed in defence of America was now ending on a date of America's choosing, the 31st of August. And going into a G7 meeting on Tuesday, the UK was clear. It wanted the date pushed back.
Everyone knows that the rest of the international community wishes to have more time, but there are two other people with a vote in that is the Taliban and the President of the United States. And in the end, both of them had significant power in that final decision.
President Biden didn't change his mind. The date stayed. And as this all played out, the former head of UK Joint Forces Command, General Richard Barrons, argues we've relegated our security and prosperity and our interests to the will of US national politics. But is this relegation or just how it's always been? Watching from Washington, the BBC's North America editor, John Sopel, wrote that what was happening is a statement of the reality of the special relationship, which, when push comes to shove and when America is feeling cornered, isn't so very special. And in John's article, he thinks back to this moment in 2001, when then UK Prime Minister Tony Blair visited Washington after the 9/11 attacks. In the months to come, he'd provide UK support for America's invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. 20 years on, he's had this to say.
Many people, as a result of what's happened in Afghanistan, are going to have a deep doubt as to whether we can be relied upon. And that is not a good thing.
And Mr. Blair's fierce criticism of Joe Biden's withdrawal also raises a question about whether the UK can rely on the US. But when the UK Foreign Secretary, Dominic Raab, was asked today if the US refusal to extend that deadline meant the special relationship was over, he replied, no, of course it isn't. It matters a huge amount. And if that's the UK perspective, this is US State Department spokesperson Ned Price last week.
We certainly have an extraordinary partner in the British government.
To back that up, Mr. Price added,
what I can say is that our coordination with the British government, with all of our NATO allies, has been consistent, it has been clear, and there has been a consensus on this.
But that's only the case if consensus is the US deciding a policy and then the UK and others going along with it because there's no other option and not because they agree. It is a relationship. Special's one word for it. Others are being used too.